Hi everyone, this is Jim with round 4 coverage of the 2014 U.S. Championship taking place in U.S. Chess Championship taking place in St. Louis, Missouri. For the round 4 game, I selected the game between Gata Kamsky and Sergey Erenburg. It was a bit difficult to choose a game this round because actually there were 4 decisive results. So pretty interesting play going on in the championship. And if you have time, you might want to take a look at some of the other games. Let's say a few words about the participants. Gata Kamsky is the number 2 chess player by rating in the United States. He's been a long time player here. He's won the U.S. Championship 4 times, the first time in 1991. He's had an interesting career where he has contended for the World Championship title multiple times. And he played actively and then he took a break from chess for about 5 to 10 years, and then he started playing again. So he went to school while he was on his break studying pre-med and law, but then eventually decided to take up chess again and says that he's enjoying it more than ever. There's less pressure the second time around, apparently. His opponent, Sergey Erenburg, is more recent comer to the United States. He came here in 2007 to go to school at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and he's been in the U.S. since then. He came from Israel, where he was the national champion in 2004. Sergey is 31 years old, and Gata Kamsky is 39. And Sergey is rated number 7 in the U.S. Among active players. He has a FIDE rating of 2633, and Gata's rating is 2713, number 2 in the U.S., as I said. So, well, let's take a look at the game. Started with d4, d5, and then the funny move, bishop g5. And the first time you see this, you might think, well, what is the bishop attacking? There's no knight on f6 for it to attack. But it is creating kind of an annoying pin on the e-pawn there. That can't, so the natural move e6 can't be played here. Now, this is related to the Trompowsky. The Trompowsky is this opening, where the knight comes to f6, and then the bishop comes out. And then there's many options for black at this point, including the move knight to e4 here, I think is the main move, followed by d5. So, but in this game, the move order was different. It was d4, d5, and bishop g5, not even waiting for the knight to come to f6. So knight f6 could be played, but it's slightly different. It's considered a variation of the Trompowsky by some opening classifications, but actually this move is known as the Hodgson Attack, after the British Grandmaster Julian Hodgson. If knight f6 is played now, then white can take it, which the other line in the Trompowsky, where the knight is already there, black can avoid the exchange of the knight by playing knight to e4. So this is slightly different. Although that is a main move, just to play knight f6 there and allow the exchange. Sergey chose to play h6, and the bishop drops back. So I wanted to say about Gata that he's one of the few grandmasters at the top level that plays the London system. So he's used to these setups where he has a pawn triangle and a bishop outside the pawn chain. So we'll see something like this later in the game, although we don't get the full triangle. The London system is really pawns on all of these squares and the bishop on f4. But it's similar in some respects. Anyway, black continues with c6, opening up a line for his queen. And white plays knight f3, just developing, and queen b6. The queen comes out and puts immediate pressure on the b-pawn, and Gata plays b3, which looks a little bit funny because the bishop that would be fianchettoed here is now gone over to h4. But the move b3, besides protecting and safeguarding the b-pawn, also has the idea of supporting a later c4. So not a wasted move. Bishop f5 is played. And now e3. And now we see this pawn chain I was talking about, and the bishop outside the pawn chain. Black goes e6, so black has the same idea. He's got a good bishop outside the pawn chain, and white decides to trade it off. Kamsky decides to trade it off with the move bishop d3. Now, let's see. Black could avoid the trade for a while, but if it goes here, it would just get kicked around. Say, if it doesn't want to trade for the knight, it comes back here. Then this is fine. And in fact, this is better for white because the exchange will double the pawns here. After the bishop takes bishop, pawn takes bishop, creating a hole on f7, and that's good for white. So black just goes ahead and takes the bishop here, and develops his knight to e7, and white gets in the move c4. So we get to a position where maybe white has some slight edge. He's got a little more space in the center with these pawns. The development is pretty comparable. There's still a couple pieces on the back rank here and a piece here on the back rank, so both sides need to complete their development. But black continues with knight f5, which is a common idea, playing against the London system and other systems where the bishop is outside the pawn chain, is just to go after that bishop. And of course you have to be willing to play without it. Gata drops the bishop back to g3. Black doesn't take the bishop right away, but plays knight d7 first, and now knight bd2, and now it takes on g3, and white takes with the pawn. So with this exchange, it did open up a file for the rook, but it's not clear if this is going to amount to much. The pawns are somewhat destabilized here on the king side, but I don't know, it still can provide good cover for the king. We'll see that later in the game. Black plays g6, and maybe he's thinking about fianchettoing the bishop. Bishop to g2 possibly is an idea. And white pushes on with e4, so immediately breaking in the center without waiting to castle. I like to castle before I open up the center, but Gata has correctly judged that this is a position where he can open up the center without undue risk to his king. So d takes e4, knight takes e4, and black decides to castle queenside. A very logical move, putting his rook opposite the queen, and now he just needs to develop his dark squared bishop. His rooks will be connected, and maybe has some pressure on the d-pawn. Gata, seeing that black has castled to the queen side, decides to castle king side. I guess the pressure on the h-file is not going to amount to much if there's no target over there like the king to really to attack. So after white castles, black immediately goes after the center with the move e5. So taking advantage of the there's kind of a pin on this pawn. If white were to take on e5, then this knight could move with a discovered attack on the queen. Might be a little bit uncomfortable. Although looking at the chess engine, it appears that it's a playable line to just take here, for example, and knight takes e5, and now the queen goes to c3. It's got kind of an interesting look at this diagonal. There's a loose rook in the corner here, so knight takes f3 check with tempo, and then queen to d4 is that's a suggestion of the computer of how to play this position. So it is possible to take there. Gata decided to play c5 here, which is also a top-rated move from the chess engine. And the queen needs to move. The queen goes to c7. And this position is rated about equal. What's funny, looking at this game, I looked at it previously, is it's hard to spot. At some point, white, I guess I'll give the game away a little bit, white starts to get some advantage, and it's hard to see exactly when it happens, but if you follow along, it just kind of gradually grows and grows. So queen to c3, putting some pressure on the pawn and also getting out of the pin. f5, counterattacking the knight. And maybe this is the start of black's problems, because it does loosen up his space around his king. There's now these squares are no longer completely under black's control, and white immediately jumps in here with the knight. So you might think this is losing a pawn because of bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, but there was this pawn hanging on e5 at the end of that, so that the material stays even. And now this is a pretty strong passed pawn here. White can defend it with the rook, the knight, and the bishop, so pretty much all his pieces. And it's not... maybe black has ideas of chasing the knight away and winning this pawn as a counterplay. So the queen goes to e7, and white plays b4. And still the chess engine rates this position as about even, with just a slight edge for white. King b8 getting over to the side, and now a4. So just going to attack with the pawns against the queenside king here. Rook h to e8, getting away from any ideas of attack from the queen. I think more just to put pressure on the center. There wasn't really a threat on this diagonal, as the rook was well defended by the other rook over in the corner. So rook f to e1, supporting his advanced pawn. And knight to f8, maybe rerouting the knight to blockade on e6 is a possibility. So b5, pushing on and attacking kingside here. And c5. Black doesn't want to open up lines around his king, so he pushes on with the pawn and tries to keep all the lines closed. And as I mentioned before, the white's advantage has increased a little bit. It's not yet a winning advantage, but it's a little more than it was before. And it's just interesting to watch the game and see that white's advantage just increases kind of slowly and step by step. But he has this passed pawn, which is a bit dangerous, but black has a passed pawn too. And he has these menacing looking pawns near the black king. Whereas I would say that's black's biggest problem here, is his counterplay against white's king is a little bit far away. Black plays, no, white pushes on with b6 here. And once again, black wants to keep lines closed, so he plays the move a6. And now rook a to d1, centralizing the rooks. Now that the lines are closed up over here, the rooks are more active in the center. And the pawn on b6 now covers these squares, and there's always the threat of a back rank mate. The knight goes to e6. This was the plan, blockading the pawn, the passed pawn, and defending the knight on d8. So good solid move. Now a5, just locking up the king side, defending the b pawn, so he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. And black pushes on with g5. So now rook d6, threatening to double rooks on the d file, putting some pressure on the knight. And black ignores this and pushes on with h5. And somewhere around here, yeah, once again the advantage has started to increase for black. So maybe, for white, I mean. So maybe it wasn't such a good idea to push those pawns forward. But it's hard to come up with another plan. Rook d7 is a computer suggestion, but and then queen d3. White can just keep intensifying the pressure on the d file. It's going to be hard to counter all this. And knight to d4, trying to shut it down. But this is going to result in the loss of a pawn here, it looks like. So yeah, it's just a difficult position to play. If we back up here for the move g5, maybe g5 was really the start of the downfall here. At this point, the engine is suggesting trading rooks and trying to relieve some of the pressure that way. I don't know if this is so great either, however. Check the exchange here. And rook d8. And rook d6 once again, just trying to get that advanced rook. If he tries to win a pawn, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and queen to f6. This invasion is pretty strong. So this pins the knight and threatens the threatens the king side pawns over here. You know, white and black seems to have some counterplay against the king, but I guess this move is not leading anywhere. After check, king goes to h2, and now how to defend the knight. I guess the queen comes back to defend the knight, and these pawns are still loose. So the check just doesn't lead to anything. So this is just a really difficult position. And it's just natural that black wants to get some counterplay against the king. So g5, very, very natural move. And Gata responded with rook d6, as I mentioned before, and now h5 pushing forward. So rook e to d1, doubling on the d file, very logical play, and now f4, trying to bust up things here around white's king, but it apparently is just too slow. Queen to c4 starts to put more pressure against the knight, and also don't forget that if there's an exchange out on e6 and this rook is left undefended, when the rook takes it, it'll be with checkmate. So the king is in a dangerous position here. Black plays king c8 to help to add some defense to the d8 rook. And now g takes f4. G takes... Oh, right, it was white's turn. G takes f4, g takes f4, and rook on d1 to d5, just creeping in with the rooks, and perhaps with the idea of getting the queen behind the rooks and setting up Alekhine's gun formation. Alekhine's gun. That's with the queen with two rooks in front of it. Okay, so black tries queen f7 in this position, but actually this position is already lost, and so that's what I meant about things going from bad to worse. It just kind of, in a creeping fashion, got worse and worse. But somewhere in these pawn exchanges, the evaluation suddenly jumped. Maybe it was... no, even here, it's already lost according to the engine, as it looks at it in retrospect. So I guess f4 it thinks is bad, but other moves, when you look at them, it turns out they have problems too. What's the engine suggesting now? G4? Just see if we can pin down where things go wrong. But after g4, knight h4, knight to d4, trying to block this file once again. So that was an interesting try. Chase the knight away and then put the knight here on d4 to block the d file without the knight being able to take it. But now queen takes c5. White picks up this pawn, and there is one check here, but it doesn't do a whole lot. But the knight was not stable. The king just runs to h2, and white's a pawn up, and the attack continues. So just really hard to find a defense here. One other try here was rook c8. So let's try that. Rook c8. And now just queen d2, tripling on the d file and threatening rook to d7. Knight f8, trying to cover the d7 square, and then pushing on with e6. Yeah, it's just looking very unappetizing. King to a8, trying to run away. What else? Is there any positive suggestions here? Yeah, king to a8, and then knight takes g6 is the knight takes g5 is the best play, according to the computer, best play for black. So once again, black is a pawn down, and white is attacking. If he tries to save that pawn, then knight e5, and the attack is crashing through on d7. So yeah, I think this position is already beyond saving, but it's funny how it just gradually got worse and worse until it's in this position. So anyway, f4 was tried here, and queen c4, attacking the knight. King to c8, defending the rook, and now g takes f4, g takes f4, rook d1 to d5. At this point, black played the move queen to f7, maybe to allow a rook to come up and try and defend sideways. The pawn on b7 there needs defense. So now rook takes c5, check. Excuse me. Rook takes c5, check. This way. Rook takes c5, check was played. The king runs back to b8, and now rook to c7. And black resigned here. So there's multiple threats in this position. First of all, there's a threat to take the knight, and then the queen is under attack. So the queen has to stay in touch with the knight. If the queen, for example, drops back to g8 to try and hold on to the knight, there's a mate here, starting with rook takes e6, and rook takes, And there's a very nice mate in 2 or 3 here with this move. Very interesting tactic. So check. You don't want to run away from that. You take, and then queen here, check, king there, and checkmate. So sacrificing the rook leads to checkmate in short order. Let's see, if the king runs here, then you just have this check, and the king goes back, and then it's checkmate. So it's a forced checkmate with the sacrifice of the rook on b7. So if we back up other places, the black queen could go maybe here. So another try. But queen d5, looking at the mate on the second rank again. Let's see. Oh, the engine is suggesting some spite checks like queen b1. Queen b1, check. Chasing the king to h2, and then queen to e4 as a recommended defense. But this is just giving up the queen, so that's not really a defense. What else? Queen e4 directly. Queen takes g2, giving up. Yeah. So all these moves just lead to mate. I guess it's just unstoppable at this point. So anyway, let's back up a move or two. Right here was when Sergey resigned and Gata won the game. So if we look at the standings after 4 rounds, Alexander Linderman won his game today, so he remains in the lead with 3.5 out of 4. Timur Gureyev also won a game today, which was kind of a long and tedious game, but he won it, and he's at 3 out of 4 in second place. And Gata Kamsky, with this win, is now in third place with 2.5 out of 4, and also in third, tied at 2.5 with Gata, is Alexander Onashek. So that's where things stand in the 4th round, and I will see you again soon. Bye.